Joining us right now, KT McFarland, National Security Analyst for Fox News. KT, good morning to you.
Good morning and happy Veterans Day.
Yes, amen to that. So Friday, in the throes of probably the worst domestic policy week of the Obama administration, with his popularity plummeting below 40% and what can only be described as a lie or a misspeak over people's health insurance and the Obamacare debacle falling down around them, suddenly there was a huge push for a deal with Iran. Secretary of State John Kerry characterized the potential deal in this way.
There will not be a relaxation of the pressure. There will, nobody has talked about getting rid of the current architecture of sanctions. The pressure will remain.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, sort of came out Friday and seemed to be publicly getting in the way, or at least trying to impede progress on this potential peace deal by contradicting the Secretary of State.
This is a huge change from the pressure that was applied on Iran through the effective sanctions regime, which brought them to the table in the first place. In other words, Iran gives practically nothing, and it gets a hell of a lot.
All right, KT McFarland, you see where I'm going here. John Kerry says there's no change in pressure applied to Iran. Benjamin Netanyahu says there's a huge change in the pressure applied to Iran. Who's right?
I think there's an awful lot more about what Netanyahu says than what Kerry says. Here's the thing. I think the Iranians, they know the Americans are desperate for a deal. At this point, Obama is looking for his legacy. It was supposed to be Obamacare. That's bad. It's only going to get worse. So they do what all presidents do at this point. They look abroad for a deal. Nixon did it. Clinton did it. And so the Obama administration is looking for a deal. They tried Syria, but that blew up in their face. Kerry's been buzzing around Israel trying to get an Israeli-Palestinian deal, and that's going nowhere. So Iran it is. And the Iranians know that. So they took the hook, they baited it, we bit, and now they're pulling it in.
All right, but Kerry walked away. There are more negotiations scheduled, but he said no deal. So,
but here's how the Iranians negotiate. They did that to Condi Rice in 2006. I mean, I saw the Vietnamese do it to Henry Kissinger in 1972.
Right.
They get to the point where they say, we think we've got a deal, and it's so close that everybody can taste it. So what happens? Kerry rushes to Geneva. Everybody's there. They're about to ink the deal, and the Iranians say, well, there are these sticking points. We have to go back and check. And so the thing blows up. Now, at that point in the deal, Reagan walked away and wouldn't come back until the Russians caved. The question is, will the Obama administration come back before the Iranians cave? I don't think so. I think the Iranians have gotten this so placed where they want it. Here's why. While we're negotiating, the Israelis can't attack, right? Because if they do, they'll blow up the negotiations. Who does Obama blame? Israel. That's the one relationship they can't endanger and risk losing. While we're negotiating and going back and forth negotiating, the Iranians continue to do their stuff. They're not stopping. They're getting closer and closer and closer. The best deal that the administration can probably get is we drop all the sanctions, and the Iranians stop just short of a nuclear weapon. Now, the whole point of this deal was that it was supposed to prevent a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Now, the Obama administration may say just short of nuclear weapons is good enough, but the other countries in the region won't. The Saudis have already said, we've got, they've already...
We need better than that, yeah.
They've already got one on order with Pakistan. So you are going to see a nuclear arms race in the Middle East because the administration let it go this far, and then either caved or didn't cave. Either way, there's a nuclear arms race in the Middle East.
And KT McFarland, you mentioned Reagan, and of course his famous phrase was trust but verify. It seems to me that if we allow Iran to fall just short of a nuclear weapon, the only way to ensure that that is true is we're going to have to take a leap of faith. We have to trust this regime. What have they done in their history that deserves that kind of trust?
No, but verification is verification. They're either going to be able to find a way to verify it or not. You would never trust them for a nanosecond. But my problem is that they're already so far along the road that others will treat them as if they have nuclear weapons, and the others in the region will do what they have to do to protect themselves.
Let's travel a little further west in the region.
But by the way, can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I don't think that means you go to war. I think that means you keep the sanctions on, because the minute there's a deal, the sanctions are off, and then you have no ability to negotiate. If there's no deal, at least the sanctions stay on, and it pressures the Iranians so that hopefully the Iranian people do what the Russian people did.
I know that you've got an intimate knowledge of what goes on in Egypt. You've traveled there a couple of times, and you have been critical of the Obama administration's handling of it. You said that there's a bit of a power vacuum there now, and look who's filling the vacuum. Vladimir Putin visiting Egypt. What should we be worried about there?
Oh, I think it's just so predictable. 40 years ago, Henry Kissinger negotiated the first deal between Israel and Egypt, and as a result of Egypt laying down its arms, in effect, we gave them a lot of money in aid, but as a result, there's not been a major war in the Middle East for 40 years. It kicked the Russians out of the Middle East. The Russians were sent packing by the Egyptians in 1974. So what will now happen is that we're now the one non-essential big power in the region. The Russians are becoming the essential power. Now, does that matter to us? Well, if we had our own source of energy, maybe we wouldn't care so much about what goes on in the Middle East. If we were to give Israel the right to defend itself by itself, maybe it wouldn't matter as much. If Iran didn't have nuclear weapons, maybe it wouldn't matter as much. But we're now headed towards a perfect storm, a Middle East where we have very little ability to influence events, where Israel is the odd man out and alone, and there could be a nuclear arms race in the entire region.
You have served this country in various positions. What are your thoughts on this Veterans Day?
When I was in the Pentagon in the Reagan administration, one thing that struck me about our military was that the nation often will lose its way on its values, and we kind of go into dark holes for 5 years. The military preserves those values. So even when the country kind of loses its way about right and wrong, it's the military that holds those old-fashioned Boy Scout values, honor, integrity, service, others first. And we may be going through a period like that now. And so I think that I look at my military friends and veterans and my daughter, and I look at them in a different light, saying, the rest of us may be getting a little soft and a little, wayward, but you guys really preserve the values. We'll come back to those values, and thank God the military preserves them.
And that's why we honor them today. And great, let's leave it right there.
Yeah.
Thank you, KT McFarland.
Thanks.